Trump administration tonight firing back at Harvard University after the school basically set up a showdown with the Trump administration.
A small federal agency that provides financial assistance to African communities became a focal point on Thursday in the Trump administration's.
Breaking news out of Washington. A federal judge just hit the brakes on the Trump administration's plan to dismantle a vital U.S. agency that's been empowering African communities for decades. The U.S. African Development Foundation, a small but powerful force behind grassroots innovation and entrepreneurship, is now safe, for now. But why was it targeted, and what's really at stake? In this video, we break down what just happened, why it matters, and what it means for U.S. Africa relations moving forward. Buckle up, this one's big. A shocking court roadblock. In a dramatic turn, a federal judge stepped in, halting the Trump administration's attempt to dismantle the U.S. African Development Foundation, ADF. The move came after a lawsuit filed by lawmakers and civil society groups who argued that abolishing ADF would undermine decades of progress on economic development in Africa. The judge's decision, issued just last week, revealed that the executive branch lacked the legal authority to strip budgetary approval and dissolve an institution created by Congress. Instead of sweeping control, the court emphasized Congress's constitutional role in establishing and funding independent agencies like ADF. This landmark ruling reflects a broader tension between executive power and legislative oversight, ensuring checks and balances remain intact. With ADF's annual budget hovering around $35 million, the organization's work may seem modest in scale, but its impact ripples across more than 35 African nations, supporting small businesses, community farmers, and women-led cooperatives. In 2024, ADF reported over 60,000 direct beneficiaries and leveraged roughly 2-to-1 in supplemental private funding. These aren't abstract figures. They translate to real farms being irrigated, entrepreneurs expanding startups, and families escaping extreme poverty. By preserving ADF, the court is safeguarding not just a federal institution, but a gateway for grassroots economic empowerment and U.S. diplomatic goodwill across the African continent. This ruling sends a powerful signal. You can't just sweep away bipartisan progress with a stroke of the pen. Why ADF matters beyond the budget. Forget big global grants. What makes ADF unique is its laser focus on community-led economic development. Rather than funneling massive resources through multilateral institutions, ADF works directly with small groups of entrepreneurs, farmers, and artisans who know local needs best. In 2023 alone, ADF funded nearly 1,500 enterprises, including women-owned agribusinesses in Ethiopia, solar irrigation co-ops in Kenya, and artisanal craft collectives in Ghana. The average grant size, under $50,000. That may sound modest, but these micro-investments are catalytic. A farmer receives equipment, triples his yields, and converts surplus into sales, generating sustainable growth. Even more compelling, ADF's model drives high repayment rates. Its renewable matching grants and community-centric peer accountability helped more than 85% of funded projects repay or reinvest by year-end. It's a stark contrast to aid programs criticized for waste and red tape. ADF's wins also pay diplomatic dividends. Deepening U.S. Africa ties isn't just about geopolitics, it's about tangible prosperity. By empowering local actors, ADF strengthens stability and counters malign influences from competing global powers. The court's decision to preserve ADF protects more than an organization. It enshrines a smart, scalable approach to development rooted in local ownership, demonstrated cost-effectiveness, and diplomatic strategy. Success in a handful of villages today can translate to geopolitical strength tomorrow. Legal precedent and constitutional balance. At the legal heart of the ruling lies a fundamental reminder. Only Congress has the power to create and eliminate federal agencies. In its decision, the judge underlined that ADF was established by statute in 1980, and Congress explicitly retained oversight and funding authority over its operations. The administration argued that programmatic priorities could be reshuffled via executive reorganization, but the court agreed with plaintiffs that such sweeping changes require legislative action. This decision echoes past rulings that tightened executive overreach, cases involving the EPA, consumer protection agencies, and independent financial regulators. By stopping the dissolution of ADF, the judge reaffirmed a core tenet of U.S. governance: separation of powers. This isn't just bureaucratic squabbling, it's constitutional guardrails in action. If a president could unilaterally eliminate any federal body by order, Congress's constitutional role would be hollowed out, and that precedent would upend decades of legal balance. What's noteworthy, the judge didn't merely criticize the political motivations behind the move. The opinion established a binding legal boundary. Going forward, any administration seeking to shift or shrink federal agencies will now cite this ruling as a potential blocker. The broader implications reach well beyond Africa. Agencies overseeing everything from climate change to consumer data could be shielded from abrupt, unchecked executive action. In today's polarized climate, this decision stands as a defense of democratic process and legislative authority. Reactions from Capitol Hill. Predictably, the decision unleashed a flurry of reactions on Capitol Hill. Democrats celebrated it as a win for bipartisanship, Africa policy, and congressional prerogative. Senator Chris Coons praised the decision, calling it vital to U.S. leadership and moral standing on the continent. Meanwhile, conservative advocates also voiced support, but for different reasons. They hailed the ruling as a check on executive fiat. Republican Representative Ami Bera noted, "This isn't a party issue, it's about rule of law." In fact, a bipartisan coalition that helped found ADF decades ago resurfaced to defend it. Behind closed doors, some Republicans privately acknowledge that cheaper, grassroots-focused development yields better returns than large-scale foreign aid packages, albeit without admitting it publicly. Several lawmakers, facing mounting public pressure over dismantling popular aid agencies, had already retracted support for the plan prior to the ruling. Grassroots advocates, development economists, and diaspora groups also rallied, delivering over 10,000 letters to Congress in the last month. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #HandsOffADF and #AidThatWorks. Even a Washington Post editorial praised the court's ruling as pragmatic and constitutionally sound. Taken together, Capitol Hill's reaction illustrates that this isn't just a one-off legal battle. It's a rare moment when America's legislative, judicial, and public voices coalesced around measured, effective foreign policy rooted in American values. What's next for ADF without funding cuts? With the court shutting the door on elimination attempts, attention now turns to securing ADF's future. First, Congress must reaffirm ADF's annual budget. The FY 2026 appropriations process begins next month, where ADF's core funding request is expected to remain steady at about $45 million. Some lawmakers are already considering a modest boost, around $5 million, to increase technical assistance and digital finance components. Second, ADF leadership plans to roll out an Africa-wide youth incubator program early next year. If approved, it could channel up to $15 million into emerging tech startups led by young Africans, an area identified in 2024 surveys as high-impact priority. Third, ADF's pivot now includes stronger private sector partnerships. Recent developments involved a pledge from a major U.S. agritech firm to co-invest in smallholder irrigation projects in Malawi. These kinds of leverage deals amplify every taxpayer dollar. Importantly, ADF's internal evaluation data shows that 60% of grants yield 30% plus increase in beneficiary income within 2 years. Advocates hope that by shining a light on results, they can justify not only sustaining, but scaling the program. Finally, as the legal dust settles, Congress may set a new statutory mandate requiring ADF to report annually on performance metrics. Transparency measures like that could cement ADF's status as a results-driven, low-overhead agency immune to future political whims. Broader implications for U.S. Africa policy. The reverberations of this ruling extend far beyond a single foundation. At a time when China, Russia, and others are intensifying influence efforts in Africa through infrastructure and resource deals, a strengthened ADF signals that America champions empowerment over dependence. More than imagery, ADF's model delivers boots-on-the-ground impact and palpable stability. Africa is home to 60% of the world's population under age 25, a demographic force that's simultaneously a magnet for entrepreneurs, potential migrants, and vulnerabilities. Programs like ADF's incubators and small-scale irrigation projects are proving that investing in opportunity today reduces conflict and migration tomorrow. That messaging aligns with Biden administration priorities and could empower subsequent presidents to lean into development as geopolitics rather than shy away. The court's ruling also reminds state and local policymakers that development isn't just federal territory. Some U.S. cities are now exploring direct partnerships with ADF in Ethiopia, Senegal, and Nigeria on vocational training programs. Public-private collaboration is gaining traction as a supplementary diplomatic tool, and the court's upholding of ADF keeps that path open. Finally, the ruling sends a message to partners. America remains committed, dependable, and bound by rule of law. Amid a fractured global order, that credibility is priceless and a foundation for future alliances, commercial ties, and shared values on a fast-changing continent. This ruling may have saved the U.S. African Development Foundation, but for how long? As political tides shift, so too do the futures of organizations like these. The judge's decision sends a strong message about checks and balances, but the bigger story here is how quietly impactful this foundation has been and how close it came to being erased. What do you think? Is this protection long overdue or just a temporary pause? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more bold breakdowns, and stay informed. We'll be watching.